Welcome to Mindflow Radio.
Mindflow Radio.
She's Jalen.
And he's Monty.
So buckle your seatbelts and get ready to take a trip towards reality.
All right. So, welcome to May. Beautiful month of May.
Yes.
It's one of my absolute favorite months of the year. Usually spring and watching the earth shoot up lots of green.
It's like a reawakening.
Yeah.
Reawakening.
It's amazing.
Maybe humanity's going to reawaken this spring as well.
Yeah, I mean...
Some of us, at least, maybe.
If the astrology is correct and the cycles of the stars really do mean things, then yes, we are in it to awaken.
Well, if there's purpose, if the universe wants us to evolve, if that's our destiny,
why else would we be here?
Right, there's that argument. And, I do believe that. I do believe we're destined to evolve. And perhaps now is a time when that's going to be accelerating.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I personally follow astrology fairly tightly and thoroughly enjoy it for how it's helped me align with my purpose and see where my shadows and weaknesses are. And right now, there's a huge movement into the masculine signs of air and fire. So the quickening is upon us. And as this year continues, what you're saying about accelerating time and evolution is absolutely a part of this menu of events that are likely to happen.
Yeah. So maybe there's an energetic revolution at hand.
Yeah. That's my feeling. And it's how do we align with that?
And what does it mean even?
Yeah, because energetic revolution, I feel like it's very misunderstood. What does that mean,
Yeah.
Does it mean that we get angry and stand up for our rights? Or does it mean that we recognize emotional frequencies and choose our future by how we allow our minds and bodies to resonate? On what frequency do we reside,
Yeah.
That it's not about sides anymore. It's about frequency.
Yes. Yeah, I do tend to agree with that. And that, to me, that's my right, is like, what frequency do I want to align myself with?
Right. It's a right, but it's also effort. It
can be a choice. It can be a choice.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're absolutely a victim in this moment.
Yes.
And you are literally being abused right here, right now.
Right.
Other than that, it's a choice because we could choose to remember the abuses of the past. We could choose to remember, and not just remember, but the thing about trauma is that trauma is unprocessed, overwhelming events in our cells, in our cellular memory. And when we think about the past, in that instant, we create the past in the present. So we align our frequency with things that happened in the past. And then we blame things around us for why that frequency is present. But it's really because we pulled our past forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So how can we not pull our past forward?
Stay in the present. Recognize that we're not fully in the present. There's the simple things of bringing our senses in and looking around the room and noticing things you hadn't noticed before, noticing colors, shapes, textures, noticing the light, like how bright or how dark or where are the shadows,
So that's
really.
Using the analytical mind to be present. That would be an example of that.
Is that the analytical mind?
Sure,
I would say
'cause
it's the
you're-
senses.
No,
Because you're
not if
using your
if you-
sight.
What's new to me in this? What haven't I seen before? That's
Right.
analytical.
Okay.
Actually.
All right.
But it's accessing, your sight. And so that's one way of being present.
Yeah, I was going to say also just hearing the sounds,
Yeah.
noticing the smells without judging anything.
Yeah,
Just
it's feeling presence, feeling the breeze. So that's like using your body to be present.
We need to embody our body.
Yeah, maybe noticing posture too.
Yes.
That's another way, noticing our breath. Noticing if I'm breathing effectively or not. I mean, we do live in a culture of shallow breathers, so
Absolutely.
it's an important
Survival breathing. That's survival breathing.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay.
We're not taking, first of all, it takes conscious effort to recognize that a person is in survival breathing.
Okay.
And then the thing about our culture is it's so fast paced. And plus, like what I was sharing earlier, there is a quickening. There's a quickening and acceleration. It's real. It's really happening. If you feel like time is slipping by, it is the quickening that's happening. And that can cause the survival to peak at this time of, if you're living in a city, how do you get out of survival? There's just everything's happening around you really fast.
Presence through mantra. I remember Ram Dass talk about that, how he would walk around New York City, but while he was walking around, he'd be saying a mantra in his head.
Absolutely. Mantra is amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I've used it that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a way of getting out of survival. And this survival mode that you're talking about, in some ways, we've been trained to be in survival mode, and I would argue that the mass media kind of wants us to be in survival mode, because it wants to keep our attention, right? So we keep watching their stuff.
It keeps us divided. It keeps us sketched. Yeah. It keeps us
freaking out.
Yeah, we want something to soothe it, so there's lots of ways to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how there's essentially, as far as the mass media goes, there's two sides, and both sides are claiming the other side
is completely wrong.
Yeah, it's completely brainwashed.
Oh yeah, that's the word of the day, isn't it?
And it's
brainwashed.
It's interesting from my perspective, because in the late or mid 90s, I came to the personal conclusion that we were all brainwashed.
Yeah.
I remember walking down the street in Milwaukee, looking at these tall buildings, like, whoa, everybody in that building is brainwashed, including myself. So, there's an element of truth to that, but
absolutely.
But there's also an element of judgment. You're brainwashed and I'm not.
Right.
I think we're all kind of on that brainwash spectrum.
Yeah.
And that keeps us in survival.
Yep.
Because it keeps us in a place of judging others, blaming others, freaking out, feeling like everything is just crumbling, when in reality, the birds are chirping and I'm going to the store to buy food.
Right. And it's there. There's food on the shelves.
Guess what? Yeah, and there's gas at the gas stations, and
there's water coming out of my faucet.
There's electricity coming into my house.
Yeah, we're able to record.
Yeah. So in some ways things are working well, but obviously they could be working a lot better.
Yeah.
In the sense that we could be taking much, much, much better care of ourselves, our bodies, our forests, the planet in general, we could be doing a much better job, and maybe we're
Absolutely.
destined to do a better job.
Yeah. I want to touch on the brainwashing thing.
Yes, yes.
So there's in Qigong, there's something called the acquired minds. And it just touches on the fact that we're conditioned. You know, we come into this world pure, fresh, clean slates. We're born to a family, and that family conditions us.
Yeah.
And it's not out of spite or anything like that. You know, there's no judgment on it. This is just how it goes.
Yeah.
So we get conditioned. We get conditioned on beliefs, stances, how to stand, you know, like posture and all of these things.
Breathe.
Yeah. The breath,
Handed down
the mental health.
Yeah, what to think about.
Or even just mental health, you know, is the family in general depressed, anxious?
Yeah, the energetic.
High survival modes, you know?
What dimension is the family in, or what dimensions, and then that's handed down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's literally already known in trauma research that when a baby is in the womb, it literally is getting the adrenaline and the cortisol of the mother.
Well, yeah, and it's obviously getting its mother's energy too.
Well, right.
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
beyond chemistry.
Right, like there's the serotonin and the oxytocin and
there's
and the voices around and the tones of the voices, the frequencies.
The vibration, the frequency of the mom.
Yeah, so I feel like in Qigong, I'm learning to release the acquired mind. And that takes effort. It takes effort to go, oh, is this my conditioning? Is this what I learned? How do I work against it? How do I change this?
Yeah.
You know, and that's maturity. You know, it takes maturity and for me, daily practices that can help me go, oh, I pulled my past forward and I'm freaking out and I'm so fearful of existence and so on and so forth. Yeah. Oh, yes, in my past, I was a victim. This is true.
Yes.
But in this moment, I'm not. And I'm able to see things from a clear state, like a natural state. And Qigong is called the Tao, the way of nature.
Yeah.
You know, and the way of nature, you know, you watch animals, they're just in their natural state. And then they get hunted, and then they run, and then they either get eaten or they survive. And then they go back to their natural state. And that's something that humans have forgotten how to do, is to get back to the natural state. Some people can.
Yeah.
But in our culture, it's very hard.
Well, it's a really an interesting question, because what is the natural state of humanity? And I would argue that at this point in time, this particular point in time, our natural state is to begin to awaken to our own power. Because I do think that we have like the spark of the universe, of the Tao within each of us. Mm-hmm. You know, and a special kind of spark that's a little different than the spark that's in the animals.
Sure.
You know, our spark is
we're very creative.
Well, we're creative. Yeah. I mean, we're very good at making things, at creating things, at
analyzing.
Manifesting. Well, we're great at analyzing. That's part of our ability to manifest stuff. But it's incredible the amount of stuff that humanity has manifested, has created. These computers, these everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Even AI, we've manifested AI. AI is a continuation. You know, it's something we've created.
Yeah. I mean, what just flashed in my mind as you were saying this is just the simplicity of a house. No animal has a kitchen, walls, a roof, a heater, running water.
No.
You know, there's no animal that has figured that out.
No, animals have like a little bird's nest, which is great.
Or a
den. It's very impressive. Yeah. Or a little otter, like a den under the water or something.
Mm-hmm. Or under the earth or in a tree. Right. Or, you know, they do their best at creating what they can think of.
It's very amazing and beautiful. but we're a whole new level of manifesting. Just because I believe it's because we have that spark of the creator within us, the ultimate creator, the Tao, right? That creates all the planets and the wind and all that. And we have a spark of that within us, and we manifest that through creating stuff, developing stuff. And now the question is, I think now at this point in time in our human development, we need to, or we're beginning to wake up to that reality that, we are actually amazing manifestors. And what do we actually want to manifest? And what kind of energy, what kind of frequency, what's the relationship between the frequency we're creating and what we manifest? And to me, that seems pretty obvious. Because if I'm in a frequency of fear and hatred and, feeling guilty, all that stuff, what I manifest is very warlike.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing humans are great at manifesting these like wars. And I mean, that's been part of the human
survival. It's survival.
Well, right. And we actually, we needed that to survive way back.
Maybe.
No, we did. I mean, as far as like fighting over the water hole, if our ancestors wouldn't have defended the water hole and...
They couldn't have shared.
Probably not.
I don't know. I think
there was only so much water. There's only so much room. Plus, we had the saber-toothed tigers attacking us.
Right.
I mean, there was a definite war thing going on. Even just our relationship with the saber-toothed tiger, we had to kill the saber-toothed tiger, otherwise it would kill us.
I think it was also that we were more animal back then.
Well, we were less refined, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. But now there's a time. Now is the time when we realize, we don't need that anymore. We don't need to kill the saber-toothed tiger anymore to survive.
Right.
We've done that. We made it. Yay. We can let go of that. It must have been a great battle too, by the way. But now we don't need the warring mentality, mindset. The warring dimension can be something that we can let go of. And we can, I'd rather manifest, let me see. Maybe we could get 100% of our energy from the sun. Let's manifest that.
Or sun and wind or something.
Yeah, right. Well,
and water.
Yeah, whatever it is. We don't need to be like polluting the air and the water to drive our cars anymore necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so we can move in that direction of selectively working with our vibration, so we selectively manifest really cool and positive things. I have an idea. Let's manifest organic food for everyone in the world. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why
Agreed.
not?
Agreed.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably destined to happen. We might as well work on that right now.
I do hope so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's logical.
I want to just touch on another point that you made about just the warlike to where we are now. And I feel like according to yoga and the cycles of time and stuff, we are moving back into a realm of being more connected with the divine.
Yeah.
And I think that some of these ancient texts were written at a time when we were connected with the divine, and then we went through our cycles and we went through our, back to the warlike fear, survival, fighting over water holes and all of that. And now we're moving back into the divine frequency where there's faster evolution and more healthy probabilities if we can mature at the rate of the evolution happening.
Yes, absolutely. And we're at a critical point in our development where we're technologically we're creating this technologically, everything is really blossoming. Talk about a quickening. This whole AI thing is going to quicken our technological advancement. And the question is, how are we going to use that?
Right.
So it's in a sense, it could be looked upon as like, okay, there's almost a crisis right now. We need to energetically evolve, or things are going to get really, difficult. Because if we don't evolve past the warring mentality, right? The next war is, guess what, everybody? The next war is going to be all robots fighting each other. And I don't think that's a very good idea. I mean, it's good idea, bad
it's
idea.
Fill some landfills, let me tell you.
Well, landfills and who knows?
Yeah,
we just need to evolve past that frequency.
Yeah.
Of desiring war in a way.
Exactly.
And people desire that. They feel like they feel empowered by the thought of it.
Right. And yeah, that's exactly where I wanted to go, because I feel that in the pursuit of peace, which I think we all want, there can be some serious delusion on how to get there. And I feel that it's very important that we work with these acquired minds, and we work with these, what are the behaviors that we've been conditioned towards, and I personally haven't watched news in about over a decade, more than that, really. I can't, I'm too sensitive to music. As a musician, I really just can't handle the way that music has been used against us to evoke emotional, emotional charge,
Absolutely.
and I literally can't handle it. So I just don't go there. And I feel like it's really important to notice that, there's so many people who are, it's just entertaining and staying up with the times.
Well, they feel like it's their responsibility.
But it's really, if we think about peace, the vibration, the maturing, the quickening, the evolution, it's important to pull away from these subtle forces that control our minds.
Well, absolutely. I agree. And, you talk about the music thing. I just had a flashback to, it was the beginning of the invasion of Iraq. I'm talking like a while ago. But I was actually living in a cabin in the UP at that time. But I would go to my friend's house on weekends and, have some civilized life, But I remember watching the TV, and they're talking about the war, and there was like a theme song. I was like, oh man, this is so messed up. There's it would open up, and it would be like all these flashing lights and flags, and then there's theme song and people chanting, and I was like,
That's brainwashing.
Well, right. Well, totally. It was completely propaganda. And it was just super obvious from my perspective, because I was living in a cabin.
Right.
And just chanting a lot and hiking in the woods every day and etc. And then I'd come back into civilization, and I was watching this. I was like, man, this is just, I don't know, in a way, mind-blowing, disturbing. But
awakening. You were awakening to the fact that the music and the lights and flashing, that these were what everyone was experiencing as normal. But because you were away from it, and then you come back to it, it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, and me living in a cabin was kind of a response to my realization that we were all brainwashed. Like that.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I bet that would have been wild.
And but then I ended up coming back into civilization, but now it's, we need to let go of some of the old patterns of thinking, like you're talking about. And I
guess I feel kind of grateful that I have had such extreme circumstances as a young girl. Because I remember, like, I could tell if something had horror in it, you know, like even just a simple show. I was just born very sensitive to sound. And I literally have never been able to handle it. You know, a friend of mine who lives in a haunted house, and she wanted to show me the article on it, you know, the article of this murder that happened in the house in the late 1800s. And she pulls it up to show me, and I was like, I don't need the article. I've already got enough images in my head. Like, my imagination in the negative, dark stuff is just way too strong.
Right.
I do not
need just like naturally.
I'd blame that on my Scorpio North Node, but I don't need any help imagining dark, nasty, shadowy images. Like, it's just not. I don't need crime shows. I don't need.
And that's what. And that's what the TV is. A lot of the TV is just like.
You just hang out with me and you'll be fine. You don't need all those crime shows. I'll just share with you the crazy imaginations I have.
Well, and and that's why it's important for you and me and all of us to just be more present.
Right.
And to get because that's where we actually connect with the Tao.
Right.
Is through presence and
breath. I think breath is super important because it's like getting present and acknowledging where are you in your breath. And I just want to bring it around to a skill I'm about to share with you, which first of all, I have just been studying this stuff so intensely for 2 decades now, plus more, and just the idea of how the diaphragm is so key to the overall physical health of the body and the mind and the energy. So how we breathe is up to us. We can remain in survival and have that shallow, fearful breath, anxious, doubtful, you know, it really feeds these negative survival emotions and frequencies. But we can consciously, this is the thing that I've been saying for 2 decades since my first breathwork teacher training, what our breath is the only way to get into the automatic nervous system. How we breathe, or how we allow survival breath to be the norm, depends on the health of the body, the health of the mind, and the energy we put out in the world. So I'm going to share with you a little meditation and encourage breathing and concentrating, because concentration brings the mind to stillness. And when we can get still, we can get clear. And when we can get clear, we can make better decisions, and we can see these things by the powers that be that want us to be divided, that want us to stay in fear and anger. We can hear the music. We can notice the flashing lights, you know, and
and we have, at that point, we have some say in what dimension we want to be in.
Right.
You know, and like the different emotional states are just different dimensions, I think. And do we want to be in that anger dimension? Is that where we want to spend our life?
Right.
Or a lot of our life, you know, or not? Or would I rather be in the inspired dimension or the manifesting dimension? Whoa, what do I want to create?
Yeah.
And breathing is super important. I'm glad you're going to teach this skill. And I mean, we live in a culture of shallow breathers, certainly. And we live in a culture of overthinkers too, and it's related.
Yeah.
Right? We're trained to overthink, and then that kind of disables our natural breathing as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to share this skill, play some binaural beats for you that I created, And
Yeah, nice job with those binaural beats, by the way.
thank you. Yeah. So if you can put on headphones, or if you have like full stereo, and if not, whatever, But after that, we'll share some more positive things on how to become who you want to be. All right. See you in a minute. Enjoy. Now, bringing yourself into your breath deeper. Notice how the breath enters your nose, moves down the throat, into the lungs, all the way to the bottom back of the lungs, and expands as you deeply inhale. Each exhale, letting the breath be released, emptying the lungs, coming back to neutral. With each inhale, noticing the fullness of breath, noticing the ribs as they expand. And with each exhale, letting the breath out slowly, noticing the ribs come back to neutral. Noticing the lungs emptying. And we'll take a few breaths, simply breathing deeply. Now expanding on this breath focus, imagining as you inhale through the nose, the breath moves all the way down the spine to the tailbone and the pelvic bowl and fills the low abdomen, upper abdomen, and the lungs all the way to the top. And as you exhale, releasing the breath and feeling your structure strong and relaxed. Like you're filling up a vase with your breath, and your abdomen and torso are your vase. Inhaling deeply all the way to the bottom of the vase and filling up with breath. Each exhale, relaxed, slow, and complete. Feeling that the spaces in between the vertebrae are becoming buoyant, fluid, flexible, simply by breathing and noticing a full inhale. Noticing your shoulders relaxing as you expand the ribs in a relaxed way. And each exhale is a strong posture and a relaxed mind. And we'll take a few more breaths like this. And one more breath, breathing optimally. And as you exhale, noticing the air, the temperature of the air, the light in the room, the sensation on your skin, the taste on your tongue, and the sounds around you. Coming back to this present moment at this present time. And here we are.
All right.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that and you feel a little more clear. My teacher is teaching me to have measurable results. So, how do you feel from a range of 1 to 10? How did you feel before that 5-minute meditation? 10 being clear, 1 being super foggy. And how do you feel now? Like, just take a few breaths to just assess. Was there a shift or not? You know, it's okay if there wasn't. But just taking time to acknowledge makes a difference.
Yeah, and once we're able to realize and to understand that we can actually shift our vibration or shift our dimension, then we're stepping into a place of psychological empowerment. It's when we feel like we're lost, we can't change anything, we can't change how we're feeling.
Hopeless.
Yeah. Learned helplessness. And that's the feeling of being stuck. And that obviously leads to more anxiety and depression and
right. Survival.
fear, which leads to more shallow breathing and more like screen time probably because we want to escape. So we'll look at our screen.
Yeah, screen scroll.
Yeah, and then we're done with that. I mean, it's interesting because for me, that's the quickest way for me to go into a lower dimension. If I want to go into a lower dimension, if I want to explore that, I'll just look at my screen for 20 minutes. And most of the time, it'll take me down there.
Oh,
you know, if I want to be sure, I'll spend like an hour scrolling. That's a surefire way for me to be in like a lower.
That's funny because
like
I
stunned. My mind is stunned when I'm done.
Yeah, I feel
I stand up and I'm like, oh my God.
Literally.
What?
Shaky.
Yeah.
Wobbly.
Yeah. The other day I was, looking too much. I was scrolling too much and I'm like, I got to stop this. And I went into the gym, because I like going to the gym and working out. And I walk into the gym and my mind was just stunned. I had no energy. I'm like, oh man, is this going to be the first time ever I just walk into the gym and turn around and leave? I was feeling that like out of it. But then I started moving my body and breathing and I felt better.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
Developing these skills of and the breath work is great because that's something you can do just periodically throughout the day. I love that. No matter what, you could be working on your breath 50 times a day if you think about it. Just taking deep breaths and lengthening your exhale and really feeling the ribs expand and like culturally speaking, I mean, just working on breathing really helps the culture too because you're changing your vibration and that vibration goes out into the consciousness, the collective consciousness.
Absolutely.
Which is real. I mean, that's important to realize. And that's why sometimes if I'm being selfish and ridiculous and spend an hour scrolling, that I feel guilty on top of it. Because I know I'm like, my consciousness is like holding it. It's like, it's supporting like a lower dimensional.
It's supporting that vibe that we're all struggling against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since I feel like I know better when I do that, I do feel extra bad. But
I do want to point out 2 things that you just said. And I hear determination and conscious assessment.
Yeah, noticing. I mean, another term for that would be meta-awareness.
Right.
What dimension am I in right now? Right now, okay. What dimension am I in? Okay, I'm feeling, fairly inspired right now, actually. So that would be my dimensional reality right at this moment.
So I feel like you've been talking a little bit about dimensions, and I wonder if you can just explain what you mean, because I know that dimensions is this strange thing that different people talk about.
Yeah, it's like a popular term.
Right.
People, this dimension, that dimension, the fifth dimension, the seventh dimension, whatever. But the way I look at it, and it makes sense to me, is like dimensions are related to different frequencies, different vibrations that humans experience. And it's interesting because in string theory, physics string theory, somehow the math indicates that there are 11 dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah, to reality, to the universe, 11 dimensions. And I'm like, so what does that mean? It's kind of mind-bending to like contemplate it, but the simplest way for me to understand it personally is that each of these dimensions is a different frequency that I can feel. And it's a different place I go to. Like when I'm in the anger dimension, I'm a different person.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a different person because I'm in that dimension. I'm angry. It encompasses, I don't know, I make different decisions. I say different things.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So you're saying that dimension just means frequency?
I think, yes, I do. Ultimately, I mean, I don't know the details to that, but
okay.
I think in general it does. There are 11, I mean, according to string theory, there are 11 different frequencies in the universe.
Okay.
That comprise, the entire universe. And I feel that perhaps we can tap into those different frequencies being a human, because we're these special creatures with this spark of the Tao within us, or we're all special and we're all essentially divine. Oh, well, I love that saying, we're spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. To me, that's real.
Right.
That's high on the truth continuum. That's a 9.9 on my truth continuum out of 10. But what does that mean as far as dimensions go? It's like if we can tap into that, we're in a higher dimension. So for me, in my mind, the highest dimension would be a dimension of enlightenment or awakening or Christ consciousness, perhaps, which who knows what that dimension is like. Maybe somebody in that dimension can like see angels, and I'm not sure, I think I may have touched on that dimension periodically. Maybe all of us have. Just little briefly, little moments in that dimension, then you fall back, But then the dimensions, an interesting aspect of dimensional reality too is that I believe the positive dimensions, the higher dimensions, the dimensions of feeling peaceful, the dimension of feeling content, the dimension of feeling inspired, the dimension of feeling awakened. Those all happen because for me, the higher dimensions happen when I have a more soulful perspective on myself and everyone else. So in other words, I recognize the soul within me, and I recognize the soul within everybody, and that leads to a higher dimensional reality for me. The lower dimensions are equated with an ego perspective, the ego tripping thing, and in the ego tripping perspective, that leads itself to like feeling dissed, feeling, going into, I don't know, just a very superficial analysis of the human condition. YOLO. You only live once. This is it. if I'm able to buy all the right stuff, then I'm happy. All that kind of brainwashing we were talking about earlier, that like feeds the ego perspective. So,
there's also the negative ego.
Ego can be, I'm feeling this, therefore I'm full of self-righteous anger. And hatred. I hate those people. If I just got rid of all those people, then I'd be happy. That's like an ego trip. If I had enough money, I'd be happy. If I had the right clothes, if I looked the right way, if I blah, 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 if those other people would just cooperate, the judgment comes from an ego perspective, judging others, judging myself, all that. So there's a distinction between a soulful perspective and an ego perspective. Like, I believe the soulful perspective is supposed to be the CEO of my life. It's supposed to, that's the ultimate decision maker in my life. Ideally is my soulful perspective. The ego perspective is more the middle manager of my life. It helps me like keep track of the bills and, do all this stuff that we need to do as humans. But when I let the ego be my CEO, when the ego starts running my mind, essentially at that point, I get in trouble, because then I can really fall back into victim stance, saying, how could they be doing this? Blah, 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 hatred, warring mentality. That's where the warring mentality comes from, is an ego perspective. So that's the way I see my reality, at least, is I try and find a balance between the soulful perspective and ego perspective. Soulful perspective is in charge, and then that allows me to live in higher dimensions.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that a dimension is the frequency and the response from the world, from you raising your frequency. Is that what I'm?
Well, dimension is it's an energetic frequency which correlates with like an emotional state of being.
And also, what I'm hearing is that if a person gets to the highest dimensions, then they're able to see more of reality. More able to see brighter spectrums of sound, light, beings.
Oh, if you're in the highest dimension?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hearing from you, is that
absolutely.
as you climb through the dimensions and the frequencies, not only do you emanate a specific frequency, but you also expand the spectrum of reality that you can witness.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it, but it's true. Like the top dimension would be somehow being open to understanding and seeing the infinite nature of the universe.
Or at least more of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, more of, the light spectrum, like you were saying. Maybe that's where the angels are, who knows?
That's, I do a lot of research on this stuff and follow a lot of different teachers. Where I get happy, where I get my dopamine, my real dopamine, is when I see the interweavings where different teachings and different teachers are saying the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And what I have found as a theme that either I'm being attracted to or it really is what's happening is that there's this realization that reality is so much more than what humans can put their finger on.
Oh, yeah.
And the percentage is actually 5%. That's what Dr. Joe said. And I've heard other people say it. I can't remember their names. But the idea is that the human as it is right now, it can only perceive 5% of reality. So as we consciously work on, have the determination to bring our frequency up, to work on our survival instincts and come into being instead of fearing, fearing the next whatever. As we raise our frequency, the dimension of reality that we can see most likely broadens.
Yeah.
I've heard of these quantum mechanics scientists who, they're very scientific.
Yeah.
Got their formulas and yada, yada, yada.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden start getting visited by, what do you call it? Angels, ETs, like other dimensional beings that are giving them formulas that then they like put into practice and find out, answer the question they've been trying to answer.
Okay. I haven't heard of that, but
yeah, I've been listening to different podcasts. I'm getting really into the quantum consciousness. Quantum consciousness is a vein of quantum reality that is being studied, researched, scientists going deep into what is quantum consciousness and the whole entanglement theory that if one person raises their vibration, they pull up the whole of humanity.
Yes.
So if we can hit a percentage of people who raise their vibration against the norm, against the well, I guess norm is the right word, but if we do that, if we realize that our frequency is the best vote for peace, then the reality shifts as well.
Yeah, the status quo elevates.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And we're probably destined to go through that somehow.
It seems to be happening.
Yeah. And that's the energetic revolution.
And that's where, if science is going that way, that is a really clear, telling indicator.
Oh, yeah.
That is where humanity is moving towards.
Yeah.
And has the opportunity to move towards it, right? Like we could still continue to try for peace, but actually have that warring mentality of they're bad. And if they'd just be good, then we could have peace.
Yeah.
That's not peace.
No.
Peace is a frequency.
Yeah.
That we attain inside by being determined to root out our shadows and be able to see how the shadows have formed from our conditioning.
Yeah.
And that's maturity. So maturity and evolution seem to be very hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I'm getting educated on podcasts.
That's good.
Yeah, we just have a couple more minutes left. How would you like to wrap up the idea of the dimensional frequency? And
well, just rewinding a bit to the meta-awareness piece, just noticing what dimension we're in. And knowing that it's fluid. I can be in anger 1 minute, but if I work against it, work on my breathing, work on, developing more of a soulful perspective, boom, I can get out of that and I can go into that place of neutrality or feeling inspired. So we move about on this continuum, is my point. It isn't set, which is great because then there's the possibility if we're stuck in depression or anxiety, which is like fear and helplessness, that we can actually move out of that through training.
Mm-hmm. Training,
through
so
effort,
important.
and through knowing what to do. And it's a very empowering perspective. And from a psychological point of view, the more empowered we feel, just the psychologically healthier we are. And breathing, like the breathing that you taught, it can be a real great way to bust out of a lower dimension and explore a higher dimension for a while. And it's something we can just keep noticing and keep working on. And I love that idea that you were saying. If just few of us get to a higher dimension, it pulls the collective up. And and just to gamify it, don't take it too seriously.
Right.
That's
part of the frequency. That's
Yeah,
part.
right.
If we take it too
Lightheartedness,
serious, then
lightheartedness,
we
yes.
can't
Right.
pull out of that frequency.
Yeah, because the heaviness is it's just a drag.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I've been like, I have to raise my vibration because it's all on me to raise the vibration. If I am part of that 10% that can raise the vibration, then I'm a part of healing humanity. Oh, wait a minute. I need to calm down and chill out and laugh a little. And part of the survival breath is the tension that we hold in our diaphragm and in our back and in our organs and the fascia of our body.
Okay.
And so even though I practice deep breathing, I have to do it softly and gently because it's possible to be so efforting, putting so much effort into raising my vibration and that I'm working against myself. And that's the teeter-totter I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I'm going to stay on that until I succeed because that's just the nature of my personality.
Well, it's a moment by moment experiment.
Mm-hmm. And training is so important, especially if you have some conditioning from family that, I'm sure it was not their intention to make our lives hard, but some of us really are coming from a deep pit of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and so on,
Anger, fear.
Yeah. So for those of us that have been climbing out, faith and trust are really huge. Faith that this vibrational reality is a true phenomena that if we can embrace it, we can win. And that's the real battle of humanity.
Well, and just to gamify it and to lighten up is to be like, well, if I don't make it this lifetime, I'll make it next lifetime. As long as I'm moving in the right direction, it's cool, And if I'm not moving in the right direction, that's okay too, because guess what? 100 years goes by like this, boom. Let's just lighten up and have fun and breathe and have good posture and see the divine in all of us.
I love that. That is a great ending. So y'all have a great month, raising your frequency, watching your breath, and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, we're all in this together, certainly.
Be well.
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.
What's your frequency?
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.
What's your frequency?
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.
Choose compassion.
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.
See you on the frequency.
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.
What's your frequency?
Where you shine your attention, you increase that vibration.